Please be advised, this podcast contains graphic audio and themes that may not be appropriate for all listeners.
There's so much life in each one of these apartments and condos, so much life that you just have to be like a forensic detective and start pulling back the layers and just examining each person who lived in that building.
We have been hearing the word forensic a lot in this series in the context of the forensic investigation into how and why Champlain Towers South failed so catastrophically almost a year ago. But what longtime Miami Herald reporter and editor Joan Chrysos is talking about here is being a forensic detective when it comes to the stories of the lives lost in the disaster. Last June, in her role of running health and education coverage, Chrysos was focused on COVID and school closures in South Florida. But on the morning of June 24th, her role changed dramatically.
I have worked at the Herald for more than 35 years, and after Surfside, I became the editor in charge of telling the stories of those who are missing and those who died.
As we've heard throughout this series, the Herald has covered Surfside from every possible angle from the very beginning. There were reporters on the scene, at the hospitals, at Surfside Town Hall, working the phones, talking to structural engineers, talking to survivors, finding family members. All of those voices that we've heard from in the first 11 episodes in our series. We have gone deep inside every aspect of this story with these reporters.
How did this actually happen in the middle of the night with it just out of nowhere? That I'm not sure there's anything that really prepares you for how mind-boggling that is.
Are you okay? Is anybody down there injured?
Get fire rescues on their way. This is huge. I mean, humongous.
We had never seen anything like this. It defied the imagination. Why did the building fall down? What happened? What caused that?
This looked like a miniature version of the Twin Towers. And we had to figure out how to cover that.
I heard the big boom, boom, boom.
You don't have a notepad to write down?
And I wish I did. The lady come downstairs and was like, did you hear that? I say, that's the elevator. She said, no.
We're going to need assistance with this rescue from the second floor. Delta side.
The building is at risk for a further collapse. Stand your ground, keep in a safe spot. We will get to those individuals. Notify them the best that you can at this time.
We've heard them reconstruct the collapse timeline using witness and survivor accounts, 911 calls, even the sound of rebar snapping inside concrete in a lab. We've heard these reporters tell us the history of the town of Surfside, how Canadian developers made Champlain Towers a reality, and how the son of a Cuban immigrant put up a super luxury building right next door. We've also been exclusively inside the briefing room where families waited for word of their missing loved ones. We've been inside the courtroom where neighbors pointed fingers and fought over money. We've heard about the massive settlement, which we'll hear more about later in this episode, and we've been inside the story of how, thanks to Florida politics, change will be slow to come, if it comes at all, in the wake of this tragedy.
We are going to transition from search and rescue to search and recovery.
My pain is unbearable. I am constantly suffering. My heart is shattered into a million pieces and beyond repair.
Once you get past the engineers and the contractors and the developers and the town of Surfside and the condo association and the consultants, you start blaming your neighbor.
This memorial should be a permanent reminder of what happened here at 877 Collins Avenue.
We do not build over dead bodies.
I have awakened in the middle of the night screaming. The surreal abyss that confronted us when we opened our front door to face the ocean. and the feeling of water around my ankles in the garage, paralyzing me with the fear of being electrocuted.
Buildings do not just randomly collapse in the middle of the night.
I'm Paul Beeben, and in this, our final episode of Collapse, Disaster in Surfside, we are going back to the beginning, to that first morning when Joan Chrysos and the rest of the Herald's top editors were on a Zoom call, still trying to get their heads around this disaster and its staggering human toll. We're going to spend most of this last episode hearing about and honoring the lives lived and lost in this tragedy. And we will hear from Joan Chrysos and other journalists at the Herald about the painstaking process of care, compassion, and craft that has gone into writing about all 98 of them.